One day, we will wake up to find that the energy that powers the alarm clock came from the breeze through the trees the night before. And we will go to work that morning riding the rays of the sun. It will light our cities and power our businesses. It will warm our homes and cool our workplaces. It will reduce sources of conflict and fuel our economies. It will connect us all. It won't scar the land or poison the seas. The food we eat will be good for our bodies and good for the planet. And the weather that day won't make us worry for tomorrow. There will be more jobs and less disease. The sea level will stop rising. And species will stop dying. The question is, how do we get to that day from where we are today? All 7.3 billion of us. We start by deciding that beyond our doubts and differences, such a day truly exists. And that is something each of us can do today. We can make today the day we stop thinking that the changes required to get there are impossible and beyond us, and start realizing that they are not only possible, but what the future requires of us. We must stop turning from the warnings of science and fear and denial, and instead turn toward the solutions and partnerships we need. We can make today the day we stop pointing at each other in blame, and instead chart a new course together. We have never faced a crisis this big, but we have never had a better opportunity to solve it. We have everything we need to wake up to a different kind of world. We need our leaders to be brave and their choices to be bold. They will either remember us as the generation that destroyed its home, or the one that finally came to respect it. We have every reason in the world to act. We can't wait until tomorrow. This is our only home. You can choose today to make a world of difference.
Not only great speakers in this forum, but some powerful videos too we wanted to share. Doesn't Morgan Freeman's voice convey this wonderful calming power to convey really important messages? So welcome back again. Moving along, now we want to turn to illuminate some of the examples of highly effective collaboration and impact at the state, county, city, and community levels. To achieve this, I want to introduce three speakers after whom I'll moderate the questions and discussion. And you can use the chat again if there have any questions. We'll try to incorporate them. First is Susan Wright. She brings insights from more than a decade of local government experience as a program manager of the County of San Mateo, the Office of Sustainability. The county government has built a really impressive record working with city governments and local constituents. The second person who will speak will be Lynda Deschambault, whose photo you see there. Lynda is the executive director and a founder of the Contra Costa County Climate Leaders Program. Her non-governmental organization is a network working with and supporting environmental activities of almost 20 city governments. Lynda's also served, importantly and interestingly, as a mayor for 4 years. So she has that dual perspective as well as some international experience looking at the problems, even in Africa. The third presenter has achieved a very different kind of transformative change, in case you can't get a tip from that picture on the screen now. Sim Bilal is a leader of the Youth Climate Strike. Sim's dynamic work demonstrates the potential and impact of the youth movement. And we already heard a little bit about that with one of our opening speakers, Nayeli, who touched a lot of us with the force and the power of her work. So what did they each do, and how did they do it? How did they achieve it? And how do these excellent examples relate to all of us? Susan, would you please lead off?
I'm Susan Wright, and I'm a program manager at the County of San Mateo Office of Sustainability. Thanks so much. I feel really honored to be on this panel today. To set the stage for our dialogue in a few minutes, I can just share about how we're collaborating with partners on climate action in San Mateo County. First of all, for those who aren't familiar, San Mateo County is one of the 9 counties of the San Francisco Bay Area. We're on the peninsula in between San Francisco and San Jose. And we have 20 small to medium-sized cities, and then plus the unincorporated areas. The Office of Sustainability was founded in 2014. With the guidance from the Board of Supervisors and the County Executive, we work on sustainability and resilience efforts for the unincorporated areas of the county, as well as for the entire county as a whole. For the past couple of years, we've been working collaboratively with 2 other organizations on climate action, and especially on decarbonization efforts. So the first of those is CCAG, the City and County Association of Governments of San Mateo County. And they were founded in the 80s. Their board includes an elected official from each of the 21 jurisdictions. And through their committees and initiatives, jurisdictions in San Mateo County work really well together on issues like transportation, stormwater management, housing allocations, energy efficiency and electrification, and climate action, planning. And then the other organization is Peninsula Clean Energy. They were actually launched out of our office in 2016. Peninsula Clean Energy is a joint powers agency formed as a community choice aggregation, or CCA, program to provide clean electricity for San Mateo County. Peninsula Clean Energy's board has elected officials from each of the jurisdictions in San Mateo County. So 12 years ago, the county launched the Regionally Integrated Climate Action Planning Support Program, or RICAPS for short. The RICAPS program has been a unique example of jurisdictions working together to achieve synergy and climate action efforts. We've accomplished this by hosting a monthly working group for sustainability staff, developing blueprint documents, and providing individualized technical assistance for the jurisdictions. Over the past 12 years, all jurisdictions in San Mateo County have leveraged the RICAPS program at some point. We've received great feedback from city staff that RICAPS has catalyzed climate action work that would have been difficult or unlikely otherwise, especially for the smaller cities. A couple of years ago, we recognized the need and opportunity to accelerate our efforts. So we began working much more closely with CCAG and Peninsula Clean Energy on the strategic direction of the RICAPS program. In addition to just helping cities individually and sharing information and tools with the group, we began providing leadership for bold moonshot goals, or coordinated initiatives to accelerate reductions in carbon emissions. We're focusing on 3 main areas: building decarbonization, sustainable transportation, and carbon sequestration. As an example, last year, the Office of Sustainability supported jurisdictions on a collaborative compost procurement to help advance carbon sequestration. This year, we're developing a countywide approach for electrifying existing buildings, or transitioning away from natural methane gas equipment to all-electric alternatives. We're exploring both reach codes and supportive programs that will help eliminate barriers to electrification. We're also exploring a policy for ending methane gas service in San Mateo County by 2045. There's a lot more details I could share, but I will stop there for now.
Okay, great, Susan. That's really a great example of a government initiative to build a coalition and make some very substantial progress working with constituents. So let's turn to the non-government example. And of course, we're very conscious of the fact this is also a county-wide initiative, but from a different perspective. Take it away, Lynda.
Hey, everybody. It's so nice to spend a Saturday afternoon with like-minded people, and I'm excited to tell you about what we've been doing here in Contra Costa County, which is in the San Francisco Bay Area. And I do have a unique background and perspective that brought me here today. And all of this that we've heard today comes down to, so what are we going to do about it? And I did work at the EPA with a federal level for 21 years, and that was a very burdensome, slow federal process. Talked about permitting before. There's nothing more burdensome than the NEPA process at EPA. Then I became a former local mayor, but small town politics. And when you're working full time over at the US EPA and trying to rush home to do policy on something like climate change, when you're a volunteer mayor, you're working and no staff, no money. So rather than run for election, the Contra Costa Climate Leaders Group was took up the rest of my time. Really, you can see this time and time again, and it was mentioned a few times in our breakout sessions, how, a plastic bag ban at a city would drive a state ban later, how a community choice aggregate power in Marin, now drives so many community choice aggregate powers across the country. How organic waste diversion we started in my small town of Moraga is now, mandated by the state. And it was mentioned earlier, I think by the representative, that electrification is, because a city drive is now becoming a state issue. So really local actions do move the world. Especially left out of this sometimes, though, are these smaller conservative, small volunteer cities. I don't think a lot of people realize a mayor is a volunteer position. And in Contra Costa County, we had a lot of climate deniers. We still have a lot of skeptics. And it's really important to continue educating and sharing our best practices. And so that's what we've been doing. We've been, as a nonprofit, an NGO, a 501c3, working with our electeds, working with staff, looking at community advocates, trying to find who is the climate leader, because every city is different. You might not have a sustainability director. You might not have a mayor. You might not have a staff person. So we put out a lot of information, newsletter, periodic workshops, and all of that, and try to put it all in a way so that if someone like myself comes home from a day job at EPA, wants to try to pass a policy on electrification, how can I copy and paste that? How do we address this climate emergency that we're in the middle of? How do we do that? So we've been doing that since 2007. And one of the things I'm going to talk about now briefly is this interesting scorecard approach that we've taken in our county. So just let's see, how do I move this? Just a second. So I'm having the same problem the previous speaker was having. Can you see that even though it's not full screen?
Yes, we do.
Okay, so Contra Costa County is one of 9 counties outside of the San Francisco Bay Area. So what we did is we started looking at our county and we started saying, hey, who did pass that plastic bag ban? Who did sign up for that Marin Clean Energy? Who did, and to give them actually scores. Because what I know as an elected official, if you're running for election, no one wants to be at the bottom of the list. Everyone wants to be at the top. So we call it the wall of fame or the wall of shame. You want to be at the top of the list. So we started cranking out these scores. And what we did is we tried to look at environmental actions or factors that were already out there. I could go into a whole workshop just on the methodology of how we came up with data points, how we standardized them, how we did that. But the bottom line, you're welcome to visit our website afterwards, is we tried to make it visual. We really realized that when you really put it in a bar chart and you can see real quickly how Richmond's doing versus Hercules in Contra Costa County. If you're a mayor, you're like, oh dear, no, I don't want to be all the way down there at the bottom. So that's what we've been doing in our county. We've not only been trying to look at policy and pass policy, but we're trying to rank policy. It's important to point out that this was really important that it was local to just our county, because you can't take a small town of Hercules and Clayton and line them up alongside Berkeley or Oakland. It just doesn't work. So it clearly got a lot of attention. It clearly started helping the cities look and see, well, gee, what is going on over next door in the little town of El Cerrito that made them, number 2 in Richmond going on. So it was something we could reproduce. It's something that's really easy to scale up. It's something that you could do in any city across the nation and internationally. Because what it does is we look closely, we figured out some various measurables, like we gave points for whether you passed a climate emergency, whether you had a greenhouse gas emission inventory, whether you had a climate action plan. And then we gave points for things like we were able to find databases on the total kilowatt hours of solar in cities, city by city data, how many kilowatts are installed in the city of Brentwood versus Pinole. And we worked with the local utilities to get that. We looked at urban planning. We looked at whether or not they have, open space or parks or have an open space area. We looked at walkability. What's important is we really looked at everything that was already available. And we put it together in one place, and we gave these weighted scores. And I had a fabulous Andrew Johnson worked with me, a UCLA graduate, to put this together. And he's had so much fun with it. He stayed with me for 4 years, and we're reproducing the new one this year. So all of those are the successes and the snapshot. And again, I could go on to quite a bit of discussion. We're trying to, I think, catch up for some time here. I do want to touch on some of the hurdles that we had to overcome. Because we limited it to our county, a lot of times they're like, oh, Walnut Creek doesn't want to do anything else because I think they're doing pretty good already. It's like, well, our intent wasn't to compare them to Oakland or San Diego or, New York City. It was, intended to help our county, our local regional effort to see what we're doing. We had weighting factors because it wasn't fair to look at a city and say, oh, gosh, look, Pinole has so many green businesses. But, Lafayette only has 3. What we had to do is we had to weight them. We had to look at the number of total green businesses compared to the total businesses registered in Dun and Bradstreet so that we could give a fair shake to the city. So we were really comparing apples to apples. So we had a lot of data hurdles to overcome. And then we had a lot of outreach and attendance at meetings. The youth have talked about how important, and was it our representative who said, be impatient. It's important to go to these cities and still show up, and still needed to keep doing this each year. You can see I have 2 up there on the chart. We shortened our scorecard in the last year, primarily because of funding and trying to get all the data that we need. We're still looking at, we've added things like electrification. We give a city a score if they pass an electrification ordinance, yes or no. We still look at the solar megawatts installed in city by city. We're still looking at whether or not they made the effort to pass a climate emergency resolution, if they're hiring fellows and students through the Civic Spark program, et cetera. So we're looking at doing other pilot studies. We'd love to put this out in another county. We've been talking with Down Bay Area for some time, how we might do that. Some of the other hurdles are trying to refresh and maintain this data. Even today on the breakout session I was at, the 30 by 30 plan of looking at how we're going to preserve land and how that's so important all the way down to the local mayor level to set aside land. And how does that look? Like, might our next scorecard say yes or no, the city has passed an ordinance to do a resolution to support the 30 by 30 plan. Or there was some discussion about waste and styrofoam. In the past, we did have a styrofoam ban, yes or no, or we did have more and more data because the state is requiring waste diversion. So maybe we could put in data here about a city's waste diversion compared to each other. Or maybe we could look at how much water they're using given the drought we have in California. So there's a lot of opportunity to refresh and maintain the data. There's still a lot of need for advocacy at these public hearings to let the cities know what they're doing, to ask them to do these things that they're going to be measured by. But we had great success recently at the city of Hercules, where we walked in and we explained to them that they had not yet passed an electrification ordinance and that they were at the bottom of our chart and last place. And the mayor spoke about that during his comments, and it was discussed during the policy making. And guess what? The city of Hercules is bringing back an electrification ordinance for the public to review in another month. So bottom line, it does work. It keeps it front and center. Bottom line, we still needed a climate champion in each city. We have a new elected official and a champion in the city of Hercules, so that helped. And I just want to leave a plug. One of the things I'd love to petition for and put in our chart for I've been saying this since I was an elected official back in 2004. I would love every city staff report to have a section like fiscal impact. That was climate impact. And a couple of cities have done that before. So no matter what topic you bring before you, it would say, here's the fiscal impact of this, and here's the climate impact of this. And just like fiscal impact, you could say no impact, or climate impact, you could say that, you know, what it has going on and why the city needs to consider this before it passes that issue, that topic, and that staff report that's put before them. So hopefully in the future, one of the things we'll have a yes, no check and a score of whether or not a city is considering climate impact along with fiscal impact in each and every one of its decisions. If anyone wants to get more into the weeds, and if anyone wants to pilot this, if anyone wants to know more, I'm happy to discuss what we've done and the success that we've had in our little Contra Costa County.
Lynda, thank you so much. Of course, you have people have access to your website. It was on screen, and we will be sharing links in our follow-up message that goes to all the people registered for this conference. Great examples, the two of you with kind of different perspectives on the organizational foundations at the county level, working with cities and constituents and making change happen with some interesting tools for accountability. So, Sim, you have a very special experience, quite in contrast, but at the local level, and you've demonstrated some impact of what people can do. Can you take the floor now and take a few minutes before we go into the Q&A? Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you for having me, everyone. My name is Bilal. I'm a youth organizer from South LA. I grew up on the front lines of the climate crisis. Out here in Los Angeles, we have, you know, the world's largest urban oil fields. I went to school not too far from the Inglewood oil fields. I grew up not too far from them either. And it's really been a main driver and propeller to my climate action, my climate activism. I've been organizing since I was 14 years old. And quite recently, I've been appointed to the Youth Climate Commission for LA County, and I've also been hired as the state organizer for the California Green New Deal Coalition. And it's all due to the work that I've done on the local level to really highlight my drive and commitment towards fighting the climate crisis here. I believe, you know, all action starts locally, and it's reflected the impact that you can have from just local initiatives. So I've joined forces with, you know, Stand LA, our organization, to ban oil drilling here in LA City, and, you know, pushed out to LA County, which also just recently voted to ban oil drilling. And, you know, a lot of my work has also shifted and focused to the legislative and policy side of things. A lot of our work comes through forming coalitions with Native tribes like the Tongva and Gabrielino, and stuff. So, you know, we also organized to get out the youth vote. This past election, we had the highest youth voter turnout in this local election for the city controller position as a direct result of our advocacy and efforts to move youth voters, especially, you know, these are voters that care about the climate crisis amongst other issues. But yeah, thanks for having me, and thank you.
Okay, wow. Another activist with some impact, and that's a great story too, Sim. Thank you so much. Well, look, all of you have demonstrated through your achievements that you've been able to get the attention of decision makers and city officials and other constituents. I don't know if you want to just take a turn at this. Obviously, Lynda told us about some of the tools that she uses and how she gets them out, but how are they picked up and actually seen and read and followed and to affect decisions by government, business, or the other stakeholders? Who wants to go first on that?
You're essentially asking how we're using these tools to get the attention?
Well, whatever tools you use. I mean, whether it's getting to the state legislators or like Sim just mentioned, or constituents are going to come on board and pressure their elected officials or whatever it is. So what are some of those things that you've done to get their attention and their support?
I was going to say, just the way that it works in our world is that we're essentially providing support for cities, and they are then passing policies or doing things and being coordinated with their local community. So it's a kind of collaborative effort the way we do it, but we don't do it on behalf of the entire county, if that makes sense. It's like we're going through the partnerships with the local jurisdictions. So it's kind of an interesting model.
So you've got to get those cities to agree that they will accept your support. And then are you giving them tools also so that they can bring in other people on the, say, city council or their business community? Are you involved in enriching their capacity to reach out and get the support of everybody?
Exactly. And through, as I was mentioning with the other two organizations, we're also able to do this at different levels. So our working group is with city staff, but we also then, for instance, the City and County Association of Governments is, we can make presentations to their board, which is elected officials. And then they also have committees that'll be, the public works directors, if we want to help them understand about their own facilities, for instance, and the things they can do to save energy or electrify with their actual facilities. So it's kind of happens at different levels.
Great. Lynda, you have comments on that same point?
Well, I do. Susan's kind of where I was before and where city staff are, where you've got a lot of bosses and they're elected officials and you've got to kind of moderate, which is why I didn't run again. I decided I was going to be closer to a sim and be a rebel rouser. So I'd kind of like to know what sim has done, because I've done everything in my day from petitions and resolutions and 120 of us showing up to protect open space land, which is what got me elected. But hey, I'm old. I want to know what sim is doing and how's he getting attention out there in LA and LA County, because that's the question you're asking is key. You've got to get their attention to get it on an agenda before they'll even vote on it.
Okay, great. Over to you, Sim. Obviously, making noise on the streets is one thing, but how does it actually impact them so that they'll support you instead of say, "Oh, wow, we don't want people on the street. You want to bring about change." Go ahead.
Yeah, for sure. I think, having actions on the street is one part. I think, our city, we're very lucky that Los Angeles wants to be a progressive city. And it presents itself in that way. Unfortunately, it doesn't necessarily pass always the most progressive measures or legislation that actually, goes through protecting people and the land. And when it comes to that, you have to call them out. So I've shut down banks, I've shut down city council meetings, I've shut down the California EPA board meeting to get in their face and, call attention to the matter. I think what I'm really trying to convey is, business as usual cannot continue. And that's what gets people's attention. There's like countless videos of me yelling at some politician, going viral online, and it's calling people into our movement, into our fight, and it's changing the way that we're presenting the climate movement. I think for so long, we've been sort of like the depressed emo kids where we're just all doom and gloom, and we just had to act. But I'm really about injecting energy into the movement, injecting the frontline voices into the movement, and getting the people that are most impacted to speak, because that is how we generate change. I'll share one story really quickly. Was when we went to the California Board EPA meeting, and it was like business as usual. These are all like people that are appointed and they're droning on for hours and they wouldn't let us speak, like youth. They wouldn't let unaffected community speak. It was all like business execs. It was oil execs and stuff like that. And so we were like, we had enough of this. And so we shut down. And so they finally let us speak. And there's this little girl, and she's probably like 12 years old, and she's living right on top of this oil field. And she's got asthma as a result of it. And so she's like rummaging their little purse, and she pulls it out, and she's like her inhaler, right? So she pulls it out and she's like, why do I have this? Why do I have this? You tell me, why do I have this? Why do I need this to live? Why do I need this to survive? And then like some people on the board started crying. And then the people that were like working started crying. And you can tell like the entire mood and energy shifted. Like these people are ashamed because they have never been confronted by the people that they are directly impacting by their legislation, by their decisions. And so, I'm a big advocate and proponent for channeling, like shifting that narrative and changing it around, because they can no longer, pretend like we don't exist and ignore us. Like the decisions that they make impact our lives and it causes harm on us. I lost my grandma to environmental racism, and she had cancer and she died when I was 5 years old. And so like, this has touched me in a very personal way, which is why I'm very passionate and emotional about it. But like, it does entirely change how we talk about the subject and how it's presented and how we can generate change by getting, by recording and recording and sharing stories and uplifting people that are really impacted by these decisions.
Yeah, terrific. Some of you probably have had some constraints. I mean, you've all been working for 5, 10, 15 years or longer, either in your organization or in the case of our two relatively older participants for quite a few years in different capacities. So in your careers and in your efforts to try to build this bigger base, are there any other examples of overcoming obstacles or constraints that you faced that you can share with people who are on this this Zoom call, this forum, of how to overcome these constraints, just because it illustrates it?
Mm-hmm. I have a really simple example. One of the first things that really made me dive into this is we had taken something to the city council so often to ban pesticides in our community. And there was just pushback. We kept coming. We kept asking to be put on an agenda. We kept asking, for a resolution. We do it during Earth Day. It got pushed back so many times, but we were impatient and we kept showing up and we kept bringing it. And one day, one of the most climate denier, or the most adamant against this pesticide ban in the city, actually, he's the one who said, "God, haven't we done this yet? I'm tired of hearing about this. Let's put this on the meeting for next month and let's get this off the table, because, this has just been what we've been hearing about this for so long." And we had the votes on the council, and he was the mayor that could get it on the agenda, and it ended up passing. So all I got to say is not only be impatient, but be persistent and keep showing up. And that's just sometimes what it takes. There's some folks in the city of San Ramon that have been fighting for over a year and a half to get something on the city agenda. And I just know their day is coming. And just don't give up. We can't give up. We have no choice. We're facing an emergency. And so that's a little example of something that just at some point, they're just like, all right, already, let's just do this.
I'd like to
I see a hand up, and I'll get to you in a second, Sue. But do either you, Susan, or Sim want to give any other example of how you really got your movement going because you had an obstacle and you took a decision that's relevant for other people to learn from?
I think this is a little bit different and from my role, but what we found is really helpful is to be coordinating directly with community-based organizations. And so not trying to just only directly ourselves get the word out, but really tap into our relationships with community-based organizations and their connections with the community. And so that's been really helpful. A couple of years ago, we got into contract with about 8 different organizations. So it made it a lot easier for us to get input from those different community leaders and to get help with outreach. And it's just been a different model that's been really useful.
Great. So persistence and power and follow through. Sim, any other comment, or we'll go to the other question? But go ahead. Anything?
No, that's pretty on point. You do have to know exactly what your targets are. You have to be able to, articulate them and express them in a way that people understand. You can't use a bunch of different fancy language when you're trying to build and move people. You have to talk to people how they want to be talked to. I think one thing that comes to mind is last year we ran SB 1173, which was the fossil fuel divestment bill for CalPERS and the CalSTRS. We were the first organizing group to get it as far as it did in 10 years. And it was because we were able to activate youth. We were able to activate, countless of other orgs. I'm sure there's plenty of organizations that were in coalition with us behind this legislation. And so, we were able to build a movement and a campaign behind legislation, and we got it almost off the assembly desk. But we're running it again this year, so hopefully it'll pass. But those are all good advice. You have to be persistent, you have to be consistent, and you have to, understand what you're talking about and be able to convey.
So join movements. That's the theme that runs from, and it will be in our concluding remarks as well. So Zip, go ahead.
I just wanted to say it's so great to have this group and all the folks listening too, because I was going to say, I think there's a lot of focus with advocacy around specific policies, and that totally makes sense. But some of our these challenges are really systemic. And so I was just thinking about how, in what way could we harness some of this, the activism also to help other parts of our community understand what action they can take. Specifically, what I mean is we're working on electrification and how to help people move off of using appliances that are natural gas and go to all electric. But we need contractors to know about this and to want to get trained, or have realtors value this in homes and that sort of thing. And it would be really helpful to sort of activate folks to do outreach to help other people understand what the opportunity is as well, in addition to the pushing on the policy. So just wanted to throw that out there.
Yeah, both of you mentioned education and getting a larger group of people who understand, because a lot of people are alarmed or concerned and they're not quite sure what to do. Okay,
Exactly.
Suzette.
Thank you, Herb. Thank you all. Actually, that's kind of what I wanted to address, is the multi-stakeholders and also the interpersonal relationships. We are working as individuals with our own skills. So first off, we need to hone our own skills and be, without the ego, honest with ourselves. What are we good at? What do we need to polish? Where can we put our energy, and how much energy do we have? And what is our interest? Where is our passion? The next part is how to make these interpersonal relationships, these one-on-ones, because that's how decisions are made. It's not just, it's in addition to everything else, but it is not just showing up all the time and being persistent until you can push your way through the door. It's inviting the other person in. It's a way to have a relationship that there's a mutual respect and a growth with a common focus and hopefully a common outcome that is going to improve the community and improve their life in their political sphere or whatever it might be. So how do we communicate with others is one of the most, to me, essential elements of success in any advocacy. You're working with an organization. Who are your team players? What are their skills? What are their shortcomings? Where do they need to improve? Who needs to get on the front line so they can polish their skills, especially for young people? And who has already done this hard work and has created a base that they can share some wisdom with, but not repetitively, so they can keep up with the moment. These are, to me, the most important elements in any activity, any success of any project. And when you're talking about something that is entwined with money, with power, with influence, and with the community base at large, you've got a lot of obstacles or interests that are, somebody wants to get paid off, someone needs to get a job position, whatever it might be. We need to factor that in. We need to really do a lot of brainstorming. Strategy and preparation for any event, any activity, is 90% of its success. I'm not going to go on in this forum, but I will say that you are the people who are doing the hard work. And you've got the ideas. How can we begin to collaborate and create better interpersonal relationships, human heart connections with each other in small groups, and then expand? So we're able to get on the same page and also turn a page that's uncomfortable or different and create new out of what's happening, because these old structures are not holding water. We need to present new ideas from the foundation up. Thank you.
Yeah, a lot of points you brought in there. Clearly, outreaching, personal connections, people who share your concern.
In-reach, Herb, and not just outreach, it's in-reach. You need to really get on the mirror.
There you go. Just like I said earlier, it's grassroots, but also grass tops. There are all those dimensions to elaborate on. But do either of any of you want to respond to what Sue Zip was talking about?
I actually believe that it takes everything. It takes all levels and whatever you're good at. I do believe you need a champion. We called ourselves the climate leaders for a reason. Someone like Susan, that's a staff who can be calm and infill. Someone like Sim who can get them riled up and stop a meeting. Someone like me who just tries to share best practices. I mean, all fists are out for this fight. I mean, we need all of those, but for sure, stakeholders. And I think the next section is going to talk about just that, how it's so important for business to play their part, for communities to do their part. This panel and those of us here really felt like this was a local city issue, but it's going to take everything. It's everything we got, and it may be too late. I think our wrap-up speaker, I've heard some of his discussions, his book, Earth. It's maybe already changed and we can't go back, but it doesn't mean we can't stop. And you're right, Sue Zip, sometimes you gotta, someone's gotta be the right to come from the infiltration from the inside out. And we need a Sim to just, and the San Ramon folks that are just sitting outside City Hall and just stopping everything.
Yeah, Lynda, thanks for mentioning the wrap-up speaker. You're all going to want to be on to hear Bill McKibben. He's lined up to give us a great final summary of what we've been talking about. The issue, I'm taking a question, and I may be one of the last ones we have time for. The question of special interests. What is in the interest of people to persuade them? I mean, you can go out in the street, Sim, or you could raise something about plastic bags or biodiversity or something like that in a city, Susan or Lynda. But how do you find where there is enough personal interest so you can overcome and persuade people? Obviously, people are going to stay on the sidelines more often if they haven't said, hey, this is going to affect me or my kids or my community or the health of the people down the block. Do any of you have any thoughts about identifying where there is the special interest where people know that they're affected? I heard someone recently say nobody's going to be, none of us are going to be living on an island that's going to be submerged by water, but we're all going to be, and we are already feeling the effects even wherever we are here in the United States. It's here, it's coming. So what are those interests that you can build on? Any comment on that? And then if we have time, we'll get a note from Greg too. Any of you want to comment on that? Finding where it hits people in the gut, and you can say, hey, this is a special interest. We can find out what they are concerned about.
I mean, everybody fits right home. It's always about the kids. It's about the future generation. Whether you're trying to make corporate profits, you still got to go home and sleep at night and try to figure out, am I going to be able to tell my grandkids that I did everything I could? I mean, to me, it comes down to that. It's beyond everything else. Whether your interest is to save money on energy is passe. Whether you're, I mean, to me, it's I don't know. It's a survival issue and it's a future generation issue. And I'm just really glad we've had some youth perspectives today. And I think getting back to basics, I'd love to get more Indigenous and the original peoples of the land to figure out how we're gonna, how do we get back to the survival? And that's our interest, isn't it?
Yep. A lot of good comments in the chat. I hope everybody's seeing it. Either one of you, Susan or Sim, want to comment about special interests and how to get people because they're really concerned it affects them or the future generations, or as someone said in the chat, because people are concerned about love and motivated by getting together in community.
Just want to share really quickly, the response to the previous question, I do look at this movement as an intergenerational struggle. It takes both the boomers and the zoomers. You guys have led us through like the civil rights movement and integration of schools, and like this is our movement right now, the climate movement. And so when it comes to like mobilizing people, I highlight the intergenerational struggle, the fact that it's going to take all of us to push for change within our communities, and also highlight these relational organizing. You have to develop relationships with people. You need to understand your community, or you cannot move people. I think I've been particularly successful in what I've done because I understand where I'm from, and I understand like even the state and landscape very well. We have a very great relationship with our sister organization, Youth versus Apocalypse, up in the Bay from Los Angeles. And so it just really does come down to be able to talk to people how they want to be talked to communicate in that way, and to understand, what are people's needs, what are they not being met. And I'll guarantee you can find an intersectional point, because the climate crisis touches so many different aspects, whether it's migration. So, I've been building relationships with people that are, fighting against human trafficking and persecution of migrants, because, the climate crisis is moving people from their homes, it's displacing them. For housing, we've been integrating with a lot of housing rights activists and things like that, because it also overlaps with food justice. So many different areas, it touches. You can find people organizing these landscapes and these fields, and you can start making those relationships. And that's, how you move people. That's how you bring the climate crisis into these conversations and into these spaces. And that's, it's highly effective. But yeah, thank you for the time. And I hope you guys having a great day. Thank you so much for having me.
Okay, thank you. Greg, a very, very quick question, a very quick answer, if you can be concise, because we are hitting the time.
Just a comment, last year at my Green Economy Conference, which is coming up this year again, September or October, we had Sim speak, and as I kind of heard at the end today, he was a hit. and he talks about emotions, and he speaks from his heart about his grandma and other folks. And we need more of that. I think we need to, sometimes I talk about the work that I do as taking people on the longest journey of their lives, which is the 18 inches from their head to their heart. We need to quit using corporate speak. We need to speak from our hearts about passions. We need to talk about our kids. We need to talk about our elderly parents and how in the hell are they going to handle it when we have multiple days of 120 degrees or we have floods. They're not going to be able to handle it. Maybe those of us who are more in our working age are going to be able to deal with it, but it's going to be rough, and we need to start talking bluntly, like Gwen started talking.
Okay, well, we all converge on those points. Thank you very, very much to our panelists who got these different perspectives on the transformative things that they've done and how they've done and how they overcame obstacles. So we'll finish this session. Stay on now for the advocacy section and the wrap up. We're still midway through. So I want to turn it over to Mel Boynton and Leslie Alden, who are going to lead us in this session. Thanks.
This is great. Thank you so much. This is really exciting. I'm Leslie Alden from Drawdown Bay Area, joined by Mel Boynton from UNA Southern California Group. We're going to show we're going to first quickly run through to honor all of the breakout sessions. We're going to quickly run through the highlights from the ones that you didn't get to see. Hope you'll make sure to watch those when the recordings are available. And then we're going to have a very quick video called It's Too Late by Science Moms. And then we will introduce Cara, Pike, and Brett Walter for moving from talk to action. So I'm going to quickly run through breakout session A. Mel will grab breakout session B, and we'll go through the others really quickly. In breakout session A, it was phasing out fossil fuels, transition to green energy in transportation and the built environment. We had amazing panelists, of course, all 5 sessions did, but Dr. Dan Kamen, Patty Cook, and Panama Bartholomew, and moderated by me. The consensus is that we need to decarbonize. We have that agreement, and we all recognize that it's an emergency and there's urgency around that. But there's large disagreement on how to do it. And the significant barrier is consumer affordability. California has shown that renewables are cheaper, but there's a large fossil fuel lobby, and the global fossil fuel subsidies are a real hurdle. This transition won't be just more solar and wind, but will include hydrogen and many new technologies in energy storage, and must also be designed to be affordable to everyone, wherever they are and whatever their means. And the key intervention points, data and information are not enough. They're the least effective tools for change. And I think I just heard Greg say something remarkable about the most important connection is the 18 inches or 12, depending, between the head and the brain. We need to shift the focus away from numbers to the fundamental need for a paradigm shift. We need political change. We don't have good plans. We don't have just good plans, even in the leading states. No plan in any state meets the scale needed in the next 10 years. So we need broad scale education, but we can't wait. We have the knowledge and we have the advocates. We need the political foundation, and we need to increase the cost of carbon. We need to recognize that as much as we need to move at speed and scale, this isn't going to happen overnight. There are parallel tracks of reimagining and redeveloping our energy distribution system at the same time as we ramp up electrification. We need policies that subsidize progress and penalize backsliding. And lots can be done at the community level. It's our duty to push policy change. Voting is essential, and local action is critical and can make a difference. Mel, B.
Okay, thanks, Leslie. Our breakout B was electrifying everything, and we had a very spirited set of presentations with excellent slides. I hope you'll get to see them in the recordings that you come back to. We had a local Solar Works, which manufactures and distributes solar panels that are state-of-the-art. We had Angela Madison from Caltrans and Clean California. Just some really exciting things there, websites and available resources. Devin Hartman was the speaker on SolarWorks. Arthur Bart Williams was with Grid Alternatives, and they've installed solar panels for 15,000 families. on saving lots of money and pollution. And we also had a good discussion about battery storage and EVs. Tom English had a couple of examples of local works by churches where they they put up solar systems and changed out the lights, saving even a single church was saving $12,000 a year. Back to you, Leslie, on Breakout C.
Great. Okay, Breakout C was the circular economy, production and consumption. That sort of encompasses products, materials, the supply chain, and behavior change. It was Suze Oki from GreenBiz. She is their senior analyst on the circular economy. Rick Finkbeyer from Braden Energy, and Daniel Atwater from Behrstock Capital. And I think the takeaways were that we must reduce waste, that the current approaches to recycling are inefficient, and we need for new innovation to rethink consumption to be more aware of consequences, rethink design, increase reuse, require corporations to allow repair of products. That's extended producer responsibility. Instead of us paying for the recycling and our communities paying for sending things back into the landfill, et cetera. So sending it back to the producer for recycling. Rick Finkbeyer mentioned that waste also has potential as an energy source. His company's technology converts bio-waste into energy. Right, great thing to be incorporating both at our landfills and feedlots and farms, ranches. The current emphasis is into natural gas, but we need to promote hydrogen. I heard that in my session as well, and not do incineration. Daniel Atwater from Behrstock Capital really spoke to the financial industry, which can facilitate a net zero future. And he urged that we monitor local suppliers and promote efficient projects by local government. Again, that goes back to how we intersect and interact with our electeds in our own communities to push policy and regulations. And we need to talk with everyone about reducing daily consumption. Examples on landfills where large amounts of energy can be captured. Back to you, Mal.
Great, Leslie. On Breakout D, which was food and food waste, there's just a very good discussion. Jackie from Refed is saying there's plenty of food. The problem's distribution and supply chain. There are 9 states that have passed legislation on waste reduction and federal food labeling, but we need much more. Letty from Feeding San Diego talks about wasted organic fruits and vegetables, a huge source of methane gas, not just eating meat, but wasted organic fruits and vegetables. Challenges are insufficient financial resources and access to sufficient nutritious, healthy foods. And Heidi from US CD Student Sustainability Collective said they've introduced a composting program campus-wide, advocating for vegan and vegetarian food options on campus. And the cost of all of this, if you're buying it yourself, is too high. They recommended an excellent book, The Fate of Food by Amanda Little. Back to you, Leslie, on Breakout D.
All right, the last of the 5 breakouts, ecosystem protection. Obviously, that's sort of the basis of all life on the planet. This is hugely important. We had Ann Henney from the Sierra Club and Michelle Pissarro from Nature Conservancy, excuse me. And it was moderated again by Himaja Nagareddy, amazing group. Anne from the Sierra Club really spoke about a strong push for implementing the 30 by 30 initiative, protecting 30% of the earth by 2030. I think I got that right. And pushing for strong CNRA implementation and the pathways, stopping harmful systemic policies and practices that undermine that 30 by 30 initiative, and launching and or supercharging local conservation campaigns. I mean, yes, think globally, act locally, right? And spreading the word. Again, it's that community connection. Letters to the editor, op-eds, social media, blogs, newsletter articles, lobbying, talking with friends and neighbors, and just always putting this at the forefront and making it personal. Going back to that other comment about it's not about the data, it's about real people. Michelle from Nature Conservancy really also spoke about the importance of reaching out to government representatives to prioritize and fund all of these initiatives, to put their money where their mouth is, or where our mouth is, right? And for all of us to be volunteering locally for restoration projects, whether it's in the wetlands or in pulling out non-natives, but making our local and community environment better for all of us. And supporting the integration of NBS, I don't know what NBS is, in local land use and climate action plans. Nature-based systems, I think, is what that stands for. And that brings us to the end of our summary of those 5 breakouts. And now we're going to have a very quick 1-minute video from Science Moms, and then I will introduce Cara Pike from Climate Access.
As a scientist, I know by the time she takes her first breath, 9 billion more tons of carbon pollution will be in the air. When she takes her first steps, wildfires will have burned millions more acres she could have explored. The day she gets her first pet, there are thousands of newly extinct species she'll never meet. The night she forgets to call, the night of her first heartbreak. Her future home floods for the first of many times. By the time a child born today goes to college, it may be too late to leave them the world we promised. Our window to act on climate change is like watching them grow up. We blink and we miss it.
Wonderful. Now it's really my pleasure to introduce Cara Pike. She is the founder and director of Climate Access, which is a nonprofit focused on building political and public support for climate solutions through its learning network for nonprofit and government leaders. And I've worked with her, and she's just brilliant and works now internationally. They do pilot projects that test new engagement approaches and communication research and strategy consulting services. Her work includes creation of the Preparation Frame, a guide for understanding and engaging around climate impacts, and the ecological roadmap, a values-based approach to building support for environmental protection. Climate Communications Behavior Change, a guide for practitioners, it's all of us, and other widely used publications and toolkits. Cara regularly advises governments, government agencies, and nonprofit organizations, and clients have included the City of Boston, Ocean Science Trust, the Union of Concerned Scientists, Province of Alberta, and others, especially here in the Bay Area. So welcome, Cara.
Thank you, Leslie. I'm just gonna share my screen and then we'll get going. But thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to join all of you, and I really enjoyed the last presentations, and I'll definitely be picking up on some of the themes that were discussed and being shared in the chat. So as Leslie said, I am Executive Director of Climate Access. We're a nonprofit based in California. I'm a dual citizen of Canada though, so I'm joining you today from Vancouver Island, where I live on and inspired by the lands of Cowichan First Nation. Climate Access has 3 key programs. We do a lot of work developing and implementing climate engagement strategies and campaigns. We focus a lot on storytelling, that emotional values-based way of communicating that was being just discussed. And then on capacity building through that network Leslie mentioned of more than 4,500 folks from a whole range of sectors who are all really looking to improve their communication and engagement capacity. So what I'm going to do today is run through some best practices that we've seen in our work, that we see in others' work as well, when it really comes to local activation. And we do quite a lot of work with local governments to engage the public in developing climate action plans. So that's where a lot of this comes from. But one of the things that we really believe is that we need the public as partners. They're not to just be recipients of information or, here's a program you should get engaged in. But really, in order to achieve the massive change that's needed in the time frame needed, we need people supporting strong climate leaders, strong climate policies, but also taking steps in their own lives and communities to both eliminate climate pollution, but also prepare for the impacts that we're already experiencing. So one of the things that we found is very important is that it's all about co-exploring the risks and co-creating the solutions versus prescribing threats and the actions people could be taking. People are experts of their own lives and communities and have a lot of important insights on how climate change is affecting things on the ground and the solutions that would be most relevant to them. And this is particularly important when we're thinking about those most affected by climate change and an energy transition. So some of the tools available, engaging in dialogue. So it was mentioned previously, getting people together in small groups to really hash things out is something that is very effective. But there are other ways to do that through online or offline surveys. When we work with local governments, we worked with Louisville Metro government, and we sent their team to go to community events in like every neighborhood and table and ask people their thoughts there as well. Stakeholder interviews, reaching out, community-based organizations were mentioned. That's really critical, getting people's input on what is the best way to do the planning process. And then peer-to-peer outreach. We've done a lot of work around a program we call Community Climate Leaders, where we work with local governments to help develop programs that support those who want to lead on climate with resources, training, and tools, and to engage their own social networks and dialogues and action planning in the way that really is most comfortable and culturally relevant to their social networks. One of the things that we also really see is that we need to connect people to one another as part of activating on climate change. There are a lot of reasons for this. One is that people listen the most to their families and friends and peers, and yet we know that climate conversations are not the norm. And so really creating that opportunity for people to exchange. Also the emotional element. This is an overwhelming issue. A lot of people can feel grief related to climate change. So bringing people together really provides an opportunity for emotional support and exchanges and really touching into that heart place that was just mentioned. People care, but fear polarization, not being experts. So again, we need to bring people together, talk with one another, so they really see everybody does have a role in this change. One of the things I find most hopeful is seeing this just growing group of people across the country who are very worried about climate change, want to know what they can do. They're not necessarily going to join advocacy groups, but they're increasingly turning to their local governments to say, what are you doing? And how can I play a role in this? People don't want to go it alone. They want to have experiences like this, connecting with others who care and realizing it's okay to care, it's normal to care, and it's normal to take action. Regarding the storytelling side of this was also touched on with the last panel as well. The importance of shifting from policy technical talk, which is the way that climate conversation has largely gone to date, into values-based storytelling that conveys the relevance, urgency, and hope connected to the climate crisis. And we use a formula, challenge, choice, opportunity. This is basic narrative structure. You do need to say what's going on. You do need to lean into the threat and be clear about that. But you really need to also emphasize what can be done, what is that choice, and what will get better if that action is taken. So it's actually 2/3 positive, 1/3 around the threat. And that's just a real good formula to keep in mind. And when we're talking about the values-based storytelling, I mean, what is it that we're really talking about? I think that it was discussed earlier around the emotions, the personal relevance. One of my colleagues says, you know, what we need right now, we don't need more technical talk. We need love stories about what we care about, the people, the places, the experience, how they will be affected, and how we can take steps to ensure the things that are important to people are considered moving forward. The messenger is really critical though, and thinking that through, are you the best person to actually engage constituency? That's why the Community Climate Leaders program I mentioned is really empowering those who are in the best place to influence their families and friends and colleagues to do that communication. And again, this goes back to the formula. You know, we've come a long way with people understanding we have a problem. Concern over climate change is at an all-time high. People don't know what is the pathway forward and where they play that role. So I really love the video with Morgan Freeman because it's that vision, right? And it's hopeful and it's attainable. So just one quick note on this, it's fine to lead with the opportunity and the vision. But as you saw in that video, they brought in that threat very, very well. I wanna really end on the importance of focusing on equity and inclusion in the way that we're communicating, but in the way that we're developing our engagement and campaign strategies. So not only do we want, you know, the public involved with helping a local government develop a climate action plan, when we go out to figure out what is the best way to do that engagement, we ask people for input on how do we shape this engagement plan in a way that will be meaningful to you. So again, really taking time to talk to people, to listen, but you also have to be reciprocal. So paying people for their time if you're asking for that input, paying those community climate leaders for their time, or at least providing food or gift cards or access to new opportunities to meet people, so that it is, you're building a relationship, you're not extracting from people. And that's particularly important when you're trying to engage with those who have or continue to face systemic injustices. That extraction can't continue, right? So really thinking that through. And part of that is about addressing engagement barriers. Are you taking the time to translate whatever you're producing in terms of your communications into all of the dominant languages in a community? Are you reaching out to people from those language groups and asking them to lead conversations with others in their community? And then finally, this is kind of picking up on the inner work that we were talking about in the last session, but I want to take it a little bit further to say it's really important that we do the work in order to learn how to work across differences. And part of that is really taking time to understand racism, understand colonialism, how it still is operating, still is affecting us, and where you show up in that, both as an individual, but also your organization. So you can't be really doing very authentic external communication and relationship building with people who are not like you or have faced very different experiences if you haven't taken the time to actually do that work. But there's an increasing amount of resources and training available there for us to really, especially for white people, to really dive into that work. So I know we have a lot more to discuss in this close-up session. So I just want to leave you with those thoughts, and thank you again for the opportunity.
Thank you so much, Cara. That's just excellent thoughts, and so much more that we need to be thinking about and doing in that line. It's my pleasure now to introduce the CEO and founder of Climate Action Now, Brett Walter. Brett, I'll give you the stage.
Yeah, hi everybody. Can you hear me, Mel?
Yes.
Great. Well, thank you, everybody. It's such a pleasure to be here with you. I am sort of a UN brat, although I don't look like I'm a little kid. My dad was a political scientist and a passionate supporter of the United Nations. He headed up the UN, the global UN program here in Oregon. I made my career in Silicon Valley as a software guy. My last straw moment came when Donald Trump took us out of the Paris Agreement. And that's when I said, okay, I need to do this app I've been thinking about for a while. I want to introduce to you, before very much further, I realized that creating this app that would give people actions to take, I was going to need somebody to help me create those actions. And so I reached out to a student at Stanford. He'd been a family friend. He was pursuing a degree in journalism at Stanford, and with a specialization in climate. And so let me introduce to you our Director of Content, Matthew Vollrath. Matthew, can you say hi to folks?
Hi, everybody. I'm Matthew. Sorry, do you want me to do a spiel or just say hi?
No. That's okay, because I know we're short on time.
Yeah, right.
Let's get right to it. What I'm going to ask Matthew to do is display a screen where you will see a QR code that will get you into the Climate Action Now app and taking the actions that we have prepared for you today. So Matthew, could you do that for us?
Mm-hmm. Okay, so this is called a goal tracker. As you can see, we've already gotten 826 actions taken on the subject matter of this conference today. But we're trying to get to 1,200. So to do that, we're going to need all of your help. So what I'd like to ask you to do now is take out your phone, your iPhone or Android device, and open your camera app, whatever you use to take pictures, and point it right there at that little code on the side where it says scan to join. And there should be a little thing that pops up on your screen, and it should take you to download the app, assuming you don't have it already. Should be a short process of downloading the app, making an account, and then it should take you to a list of about 100 actions that we've queued up today on the topic areas from the breakout sessions that you all just came back from. So the next 15 minutes or so, we're gonna sort of just be talking in the background, but I'd like to ask you to turn some of those insights that you learned into action by taking these actions on the app. It's really quick and easy, and you could do it hopefully kind of with half a brain while you're listening to us talk a little bit more about what we do.
Yeah, so I'm going to take the screen away from Matthew and give all of you give all of you a very, very short demo of the app. And so even if you can't join the action taking today, you'll have a feel for what lies ahead if you do get the app and you start taking the actions that are in here. Can you all see my screen now? I think you can.
Yes, it's good.
Yeah, so the app is organized into actions that you can take. And I'm just swiping now to the left to see different actions. Right up here at the top of the screen, you see Western UNA Climate. These are actions that we created for this forum. If the app has, once the app knows your location, your address, if it has an action for you, it will, in your city, it will give you that action. So the rest of you, probably, unless somebody else out there is in Corvallis, Oregon, you won't see this action. But because it knows that I'm in Corvallis, it'll give me this, and it shows me I've already taken this action back in September. I can press the do it again to do it. But let me go ahead, scan ahead to another action that involves my state leaders. And this is another thing. If it doesn't have an action for me in Corvallis, then it sees, do I have any actions for someone in Oregon? So this really speaks to the theme of this forum, which is local action. Our theory of change is that you have much more influence at the local level than you do at the state or even the federal. So we prioritize those actions for you. Every action has the actual action we're asking you to take. There's a Y button that I can push down here that I flip it over and I can see why this action is important. We sometimes have sources for information on it like that. And these are generally very short, easy to read. I can flip it back. I can press the who button to see who else has taken this action. And I can see that 140 other people have actually taken this particular action. And then to take the action, I just press the do it again button. And now because it knows my address, it knows who my governor is. And that's Tina Kotek. And I have an option of either calling her or emailing her. I can press the call button. It'll bring up personalized talking points for me. Hi, this is Brett Walter. Give her my address so she knows I'm a constituent. And here's my talking points. And I just have to press the call now button. And boom, there's her phone number. And now I'm calling Governor Kotek. And I'm going to hang up on her. I hang up a lot on Tina. She probably hates me because I give a lot of demos. The other thing I can do is send an email. And I recommend you make phone calls. If you can. I know that's intimidating for a lot of people, but they are very impactful. But if you're not comfortable, by all means, do the email. And here you'll see the subject of the email. And this is very important. The app, these messages all begin with a personal statement. In my case, my personal statement is I'm a father who fears for my family in a warming world. Now, the rest of this is boilerplate language, and I can come in here and edit it if I want. But that first sentence is important because it shows the staffer in Governor Kotek's office that I'm a real person, and that this isn't just some spam or some canned message. Right away, she knows this is a real person. And I just press the send button, and boom, that email is being delivered. Actually, not into her inbox, but into her contact us form on the government website. Now you'll see I just earned some points, and that's important because when I earn enough points, I will earn a real tree. And that's true for all of you too. When you earn enough points, we'll plant a real tree on your behalf. Now you'll see it says for more points, would you like to contact your state legislator with the same message? I'll say yes. There's Dan. I'll fire off a personalized email to Dan. Okay, that's been done. And now it asks me if I want to send it to my state senator with the same message. I'll say yes. Now, as a result of using this app since I moved up to Oregon, Senator Bluen has actually responded to me. And I've had a personal dialogue with her. And so I know where she is on this issue. I'm not going to send her yet another message. So I'm just going to press this button that says skip recipient. Okay, so then I'm all queued up and ready to take my next action. And then one more thing I want to show you in the app is that having taken an action, there's a community button down here, and I'm going to push that. And this shows essentially a feed of the messages that have been taken. And see, while I have been talking to you, Kathy Durbin told her state assembly member to support SB 253. And as I scroll, and I'm going to give her a thumbs up. Now, if Kathy has agreed to get notifications from the app, she just got a notification on her phone saying, Brett Walter liked this action that you took. I'll do the same for Melinda. I'll do the same for Coop. I'll do the same for Jan. So you see, people are in here taking action. And if you scroll down, one thing that you'll see is people take action after action after action. See, Coop's in there, a whole bunch of actions. There's Mel. Hi, Mel. There's your thumbs up. Ed Vieira. And so that is that in a very, very just snapshot view are the things that you can do with the app. So I'm going to stop here, stop sharing my phone. and ask Matthew to once again put up our goal tracker screen, and we can see how we're doing with taking action.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, some of you are actually
Holy
taking
smokes.
actions.
You know,
so
Brett,
yeah, go ahead. No.
thank you, Brett. While you were talking, I took about 10 actions on my Climate Action Now app on my iPhone, and I'm just stunned by the multiplier effect of this app. I'm here normally when I go to a climate gathering. We send one email or maybe 3. This is just, I've done 10 in the last 5 minutes, and I'm going to do 10 more in the next 5 minutes. And I earned a tree today, by the way, Brett.
I did too.
Thank you. Okay. But I have a question for you. So we're doing this today. Can we use the Climate Action Now app after today? Is it, and how does it work going forward?
Yeah, Matthew, would you go ahead and put the goal tracker back up? Yeah, absolutely. You can use it. I hope you'll use it going forward. It's on your phone now. Now we made it an app.
Oh, that's great.
We made it an app because we all have these phones. I mean, virtually every one of us has a phone with us most of the time. And as you can see, it's so easy. It only takes a few seconds to fire off a personalized message, to your legislators. And you can do that while you're standing in line at your grocery store or waiting for your coffee to brew in the morning. In fact, I think that's how most people do. They sort of make it into a habit, and they just are taking the messages for a certain amount of time. We have one of our members, Rick Moody, was the former senior academic advisor for the AARP, and he takes 75 actions a day religiously. Wow. And he's not the only one who does a lot. So yeah, you can use it after today. Please do. It makes it easy. Our whole theory was that if we made it really easy and rewarding for people to take action, that they would, and that has really been borne out. And also, once you have an account with the app, you'll get our weekly newsletter, and you can unsubscribe from it, of course. But I encourage you to continue getting it, because we update the impact we're having as a app community. We share success stories, and we introduce, this is very important, every week there's a new campaign that we get behind. And just recently, for example, we did a campaign to advocate for the UN's High Seas Treaty, trying to get Senate support for that incredibly important treaty.
So I do this every morning. Actually, I have my cup of coffee, and at 8 o'clock, I get the ping from Climate Action Now, and I sit there drinking my coffee, and I just run through actions to take every morning, which is easy and fun. But I have a question for you that I know some people in our audience might have, and that is, do our emails, these mass emails, actually make a difference? Does it really have an impact that we hope it does?
A lot of people wonder about that. And I think if you use the app long enough, you'll discover the answer for yourself. It's not uncommon for users to actually eventually at some point get a personal email back from their legislator. Sometimes, I remember one case where it was a New York app user was advocating for some New York legislation, and her senator wrote, I didn't even know we had that bill. Can you tell me more about it? Other app users have been invited into personal meetings with their legislators. A few months ago, I attended a virtual town hall with Congresswoman Susan Wild from, I think, the 7th District of Pennsylvania. And I was just in the audience. It was another organization sponsored it, and I didn't know her. She didn't know me. And somebody asked her that same question, Leslie, do our emails really matter? And she replied, absolutely. Now, she seemed like a pretty real, authentic person to me. So I think that was a sincere answer. And then, this is the great part, she went on to say, and there's even an app called Climate Action Now that will help you do that. And that was completely unprompted. And of course, if you ask your elected officials, do your emails matter? They will tell you they do, and they retain staff to tally your emails. They're not going to read that many of you. They're probably not going to read your emails personally most of the time. But they have staff who are reading it or taking your calls, and they're keeping a tally, which they report on a regular basis, to the legislator. And then one other piece of evidence that these things do matter is that the Congressional Management Foundation did research a few years back showing that 92% of congressional offices say they are influenced by individual email messages, and that's mainly when they're not fully decided to be true. And the only thing that ranked as more influential were in-person visits from constituents and representatives of constituents. And I just want to take one moment to say, this is a tool. It is not a replacement for all the other great things that, Cara and others were advocating today. Yes, you need to be out on the streets with SIN, and you need to be in the offices of legislators and organizing and creating coalitions. That's all super, super important. This is a tool. It doesn't take away, it doesn't replace, it supplements that. So Matthew, would you put in the chat the information on the Congressional Management Foundation's survey?
I can, although I just realized I'll have to take my screen down in order to do that. Are you able to share this maybe, and I can do the links?
No, let me just do the link myself.
Okay, perfect.
And then I think and one other thing, you asked about effectiveness. You said these matter, and I think you asked about effectiveness. Matthew, I think I'm going to have to ask you to take it down for a second. I'm okay. Doing the congressional management, but very recently, New York State Senate passed a bill, and the state senator who sponsored the legislation recorded a video thanking people who had lobbied for it and calling out the CAN app, Climate Action Now app users specifically, and for using the app, and he characterized it as a useful tool. So Matthew will give you a link to that video so that you can see that for yourself. Anyway, long answer. I took too long to answer that, Leslie, but it's such an important question, and so many people wonder that. And the answer is, oh yes, 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 absolutely. Your emails do matter. Legislators' jobs depend on their constituents, so they're paying attention. Businessmen's income depends on their customers, so they're paying attention. People are watching. They're paying attention. Yes. Yeah,
that business piece is really important too. That they're in the app. It's not just sending emails or calling our electeds. There's just so many things to do in this app, which makes it so exciting because we're sending requests to business leaders, but we're also saying thank you when we catch them doing something really good, which is really positive, right?
Yeah, we love those. Are really positive messages. That's right.
Leslie, I see Bettina has a quick question. Would that be possible?
Sure.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Dave. Thanks, Brett. This is super exciting, particular in terms of you already providing all the legislation, which is at times hard to find. You have to really go through so different resources. Question though, and it plays a little bit on what Leslie mentioned earlier too, that the questions will come, and I'm curious particular about it, accountability. So the accountability towards really, does it matter what I'm writing to the representatives? And yes, it does, I agree. And I know also that the staff is actually more responsible for doing the briefing materials than the congressional rep itself. But now the flip coin on the responsibility, you said there will be a tree planted. The question will come, where do you plant a tree? Where's the money coming from? When is it happening? So that's my question. Maybe it's even answered within the app, but I couldn't see it on a quick glance.
It is, but you have to hunt for it. So I'm glad you asked the question. So we have contracted. We pay a third-party independent green certifier. It's an organization called Green Circle Certified. And every quarter, they audit our books. They come in, they have full access to our books. They look at our receipts, from the organization. The trees in particular are planted. We pay a nonprofit called Eden Reforestation Projects to plant the trees. And this is a fabulous organization, because not only are trees what they're doing then is in turn taking that money and they're paying subsistence farmers in developing parts of the world to plant and care for the trees. And so it's also basically an anti-poverty program as well as a tree planting program. And so anyway, Green Circle goes in, they audit our books, they check our receipts, from Eden, and they certify. And they publish a certification every quarter, on their website, which we link people to. So thank you for the question.
Okay, thanks, Brett, and thank you, Matthew. This is so powerful, and we're going to keep working these advocacy actions as we transition to our closing presentation from Bill McKibben. Thanks to both Brett and Matthew and my co-moderator, Leslie. You're just great.
It was a pleasure to work with you.
Here comes Bill McKibben.
Well, hello, everybody. It's Bill McKibben, and a great pleasure to get to join you. This, I have no doubt, has been a remarkable day. And right from the beginning with Congressman Huffman, who has been a great leader on this and so many other things. And you've had lots and lots of time to think about what to do and how to do it and where we're going. So let me just sum up with my sense of where we are right now and what's most needed. I wrote the first book about what we now call climate change, what we then called the greenhouse effect, back in 1989. And the terrible truth is, we knew most of what we needed to know then. The last set of reports from the IPCC aren't that different from what we knew in the late 1980s. Really nothing has changed. The central problem remains: we have to get off fossil fuel. We have to, that's what all the discussion is about. As Secretary General of the UN, Antonio Guterres, said last month to the oil industry, your core product is our core problem. No one's ever said it much more straight up than that. And of course, the good news is that we no longer need to be dependent on fossil fuel. We're used to thinking of clean energy as alternative energy. Sun and wind are the whole foods of energy, and oil and gas are the Costco or the Sam's Club or whatever it is. But that's not true anymore. The scientists and the engineers have done their job with extraordinary power. And so now, the cheapest way to generate power on our planet is to point a sheet of glass at the sun. That is a remarkable change. It should allow us to proceed with real speed enough to begin to catch up with the physics of climate change a little bit. But so far, we're not quite doing that because of the toxic combination of inertia and vested interest that doesn't prevent us entirely from changing, just prevents us from changing at the speed we need to, because unlike almost every other political problem we face, this one is a time test. If we don't get it right soon, then we don't get it right. And that's why we're still in this position of mobilizing, organizing, pushing hard to try to catalyze that change, to make it happen in time. Some of you may have seen the pictures from late March of this big national action that we coordinated at Third Act. Third Act is the relatively new group that organizes people like me over the age of 60 for action to protect the climate and protect democracy. And in late March, we had a big nationwide day of action. We had the climate movement really back in the streets for the first time since the pandemic. And the target were the big banks, Chase, Citi, Wells Fargo, Bank of America, that are the biggest funders of the fossil fuel industry. And so it was pretty fun and pretty remarkable to see older people in rocking chairs blockading the doors of these banks, and to see them in league with the young people from the Sunrise Movement and from Greta Thunberg's movement and from all the other places where young people have been providing such leadership, but now getting some backup. We need that to continue. If there's anybody my age in this audience, then Third Act is one of those places to kind of join together for positive change. The rest of you, tell your grandparents what we're up to. Because things don't shift unless you give them a push. We can't settle into a kind of slow walking of this dire situation. We can't just every fall go to the next UN conference, and I've been to almost all of them, and accept little tiny changes, or worse than that, greenwashing about changes. We need really finally to be moving. And if we're going to get moving, then we're going to have to give the process a bit of a shove. There's lots of powerful things that you can do in your home and in your garage to make your life a little cleaner. But the fact remains that the most important thing an individual can do is be a little less of an individual and join together with others in movements large enough to really make some basic political and economic shifts. So find some place to put in an oar and pull. That's what we need while we still have some time to take on the absolute challenge of our lifetimes. Thank you.
Wow, we're so grateful that Bill McKibben agreed to address our United Nations Association Climate Forum. His message is a perfect bookend to Representative Huffman's assessments as well. Don't give up. Additionally, Bill has echoed what so many speakers and so many participants have said. There's lots that we can do individually, but he also appealed to us to, quote, join together with others in a substantial movement to make the changes. That's really the final takeaway of this whole forum. With urgent, robust action, there's really hope for a better sustainable future with justice to help everybody. So on behalf of all my colleagues, I want to thank all the speakers who contributed so much. We also want to thank once again our partners and collaborating organizations and donors. Bill mentioned the importance of joining in a movement, and I wanted to acknowledge that the United Nations Association chapters have worked together now for 3 years in unprecedented collaboration to organize these forums. And certainly the United Nations organization, our association, joined with all of you other partners and the other groups that have been involved in this forum, will continue to organize programs about climate change, its effects and its remedies. This is an existential threat. It won't disappear. It's also tightly linked to the fulfillment or perhaps the shortcomings to achieve the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. They're really intertwined, and we believe and we want to support all those. So let me just end with a personal note of my deepest gratitude and sincere gratitude to the 15 or so colleagues and friends in the UNA in California and Hawaii who worked together for 6 months for this program, as well as for the 3 years. Some of you have really almost busted your gut, literally trying to help out to make this a success. We've run a little bit over on time because there are so many things that came up. We had a couple small glitches in one way or another, but finally, thanking all the participants who are still on. And if you would like a bonus, we're going to adjourn now, but there are, as foreseen there are 2 short videos. One is first by Antonio Gutierrez, the United Nations Secretary General, who this was his final address to the tens of thousands of people who were at the recent UN International Climate Meeting in Sharm el-Sheikh, Egypt. It's very potent and timely. The other one is his senior advisor, the Assistant Secretary General, Selwyn Hart. That's only 2 minutes. So I want to wish you best wishes. I want you to Please stay strong, apply these lessons, and stay involved. So this meeting is officially adjourned, and thank you to everybody. Bye.
I thank our hosts, the Egyptian government and COP27 President Sameh Shoukry, for their hospitality. I also want to recognize Simon Steele and the United Nations climate change team for all their efforts. And I pay tribute to the delegates and members of civil society who came to Sharm el-Sheikh to push leaders for real climate action. That is what we need. COP27 took place not far from Mount Sinai, a site that is central to many faiths and to the story of Moses or Musa. It's fitting. Climate chaos is a crisis of biblical proportions. The signs are everywhere. Instead of a burning bush, we have a burning planet. From the beginning, this conference has been driven by two overriding themes: justice and ambition. Justice for those on the front lines who did so little to cause the crisis, including the victims of the recent floods in Pakistan that inundated 1/3 of the country. Ambition to keep the 1.5-degree goal alive and pull humanity back from the climate cliff. This COP has taken an important step towards justice. I welcome the decision to establish a loss and damage fund and to operationalize it in the coming period. Clearly, this will not be enough, but it is a much-needed political signal to rebuild broken trust. The voices of those on the front lines of the climate crisis must be heard. The UN system will support this effort every step of the way. Justice should also mean several other things. Finally making good on the long-delayed promise of $100 billion a year in climate finance for developing countries. Clarity and a credible roadmap to double adaptation finance. Changing the business models of multilateral development banks and international financial institutions. They must accept more risk and systematically leverage private finance for developing countries at reasonable costs. But let's be clear, our planet is still in the emergency room. We need to drastically reduce emissions now, and this is an issue this COP did not address. A fund for loss and damage is essential, but it's not an answer if the climate crisis washes a small island state off the map or turns an entire African country to desert. The world still needs a giant leap on climate ambition. The red line we must not cross is the line that takes our planet over the 1.5-degree temperature limit. To have any hope of keeping to 1.5, we need to massively invest in renewables and end our addiction to fossil fuels. We must avoid an energy scramble in which developing countries finish last, as they did in the race for COVID-19 vaccines. Doubling down on fossil fuels is double trouble. The Just Energy Transition partnerships are important pathways to accelerate the phasing out of coal and scaling up renewables. But we need much more. That is why I am pushing so hard for a climate solidarity pact. A pact in which all countries make an extra effort to reduce emissions this decade in line with 1.5-degree goal. A pact to mobilize, together with the international financial institutions and the private sector, financial and technical support for large emerging economies to accelerate their renewable energy transition. This is essential to keep the 1.5-degree limit within reach and for everyone to play their part. COP27 concludes with much homework and little time. We are already halfway between the Paris Climate Agreement and the 2030 deadline. We need all hands on deck to drive justice and ambition. And this also includes ambition to end the suicidal war on nature that is fueling the climate crisis, driving species to extinction and destroying ecosystems. Next month's UN Biodiversity Conference is the moment to adopt an ambitious global biodiversity framework for the next decade, drawing from the power of nature-based solutions and the critical role of indigenous communities. Finally, justice and ambition require the essential voice of civil society. The most vital energy source in the world is people power. That is why it's so important to understand the human rights dimension of climate action. Climate advocates, led by the moral voice of young people, have kept the agenda moving through the darkest days. They must be protected. To all of them, I say we share your frustration, but we need you now more than ever. Unlike the stories from the Sinai Peninsula, we cannot wait for a miracle from a mountain top. It will take each and every one of us fighting in the trenches each and every day. Together, let's not relent in the fight for climate justice and climate ambition. We can and must win this battle for our lives.
Friends, we are at a critical moment in our fight against the climate crisis. And I'll be blunt with you. Every indicator on climate is heading in the wrong direction. Carbon pollution is at its highest level in human history and continues to rise. The last 8 years have been the hottest in recorded history. From storms to floods to droughts to wildfires, we are witnessing climate chaos on every continent, in every region, and in every country, including the United States of America. The 1.5 degree goal of the Paris Agreement is barely alive. Friends, in an appeal to the collective conscience of your nation, on the steps of the Lincoln Memorial, Dr. Martin Luther King famously said, "This is no time to engage in the luxury of cooling off or to take the tranquilizing drug of gradualism." These words, uttered 6 decades ago in a vastly different context, speak directly to what is required by our generation now to confront the climate crisis. We must act now. The time for excuses, delayed action, and incrementalism is over. We have simply run out of time. Friends, Dr. King also warned us that there is such a thing as being too late. And let us heed his warning. And I have a very special message for the many young people gathered here today. You inspire us. But I'll be frank, my generation has failed you. I urge you to continue to hold us and all decision makers to account. I also urge you to never, ever, ever, ever give up the fight of your life for your future.